so that we can get started. Good morning. It is just past 9:15 at Calvary Church on a Sunday morning, and it's good to be gathering with folks. Glad to be here in the room in the Great Hall with all of you who are here, and with those of us who are joining us virtually online. Hi out there in the never lands of the internet. Come on in, y'all. We're just getting started. And as folks are making their way, just to say how grateful I am for Caroline's time with us this morning. I'm going to make a brief introduction, but it's really nice to have you back in our community. There you go. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Catherine Bush, and I'm part of the clergy team here at Calvary, loosely in charge of education and formation, and it's really a privilege and an honor to welcome all of you, longtime Calvaryites, long time ago Calvaryites who are back, and friends and folks who have made these connections through a really lovely community of Camino walkers and artists, and just a nice intersection of folks here today. We are really glad to welcome home to Memphis and to Calvary Caroline Coolidge Brown. She is a painter, a printmaker, a visual journaler, an urban sketcher. She's also a wife and a mom and all the other things too. And Caroline teaches at the Delaware Art Museum in Wilmington, at General Theological Seminary in New York, and the John C. Campbell Folk School in North Carolina. She studied art at Duke, Penland School of Crafts, and the Center for Contemporary Printmaking. I was not a part of this lovely group of folks who recently went on the Camino, but I have been a lucky participant in some of her workshops when she was more often in Memphis and closer to town, either in Memphis or when y'all were in Paris, I guess, was when you were coming back and forth. And she, as I said, accompanied a group of folks on a Camino pilgrimage last fall, and that community has been participating in a weekend of sketching. In fact, my neighborhood was the site of a roving band of sketchers yesterday, and that's the very best kind of roving band to have in your neighborhood. All these people coming around with their pencils and their colors and their notebooks and like a big horde of artists. It was fabulous to walk down the street and see them. And we're really glad that she's here to offer her wisdom with us today. So I hope that you will pay attention and remember that you don't have to think of yourself as an artist to think like an artist. And that's what we're really glad to have her lead us in a kind of a spiritual practice through art this morning. So thanks, Caroline. Come on up.
Thank you. I am happy to be back here. It was a little reunion with my Camino buddies. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay, good. I'm going to put that there just so I can know how long I'm talking. This sort of came about because as I was walking, I was also sketching. And to me, you can't really tell a good story about your trip without pictures. And not just photographs, but also sketches. And, you know, it seems like the sketches tell a much, not necessarily a different story, but a more personal story of where you are and what you want to remember. And some days it's a landscape, some days it's just a cup of coffee that was really special. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey as an artist, as a Calvary Church person, as a person now married to the Bishop of Delaware, which is a little bit of a surprise also. But let's see, forward. Yes, so I have a long history with Calvary Church. I grew up here and went to school at Hutchinson and graduated in 1986. I went off, there's my lovely mama who is here with us today. And I went off to Duke University and double majored in studio art and art history. And while I was there, found my favorite person, Kevin, who I have to say at that time was not a priest. He was an Air Force guy, and then he was a FedEx guy, and then he was a priest, and now he's a bishop. Go figure. But we had both of our children baptized here at Calvary, and I was telling Catherine, this is one of my favorite pictures because that was back, cameras and film, and I didn't know what was going on. When I got the pictures back from the drugstore, there was this picture, and then the very next one, she's looking like this. And I thought, there must have been a grandmother in the front row there saying, put your dress down. But I even managed to be a waitress at the waffle shop a few times and insisted to the Camino group that when I came back, there was going to be waffle shop involved. And yes, I got my Calvary salad plate fix. I'm really happy. We've been in Wilmington, Delaware for about 5 years now, and I'm fortunate to be part of a community at the Delaware Contemporary Museum of Art. They have 25 artist studios kind of behind the art museum. And recently, right after COVID, Kevin and I both learned how to scuba dive. And so now all my work is obsessed with underwater. And everyone who knows me will tell me that I can't get enough of the octopus and the breathing underwater and all the fish and the coral formations. And it's just opened up a huge new landscape for me that really gets me going. Fun fact, and I put cards on the table there. I just had a show of all of this work at the Delaware Contemporary Museum, and if you want to go on my website, you can see the whole show. And you can even buy some of it if you want to. But when I'm not making art, I am a volunteer shepherd, and it is the highlight of my week. Every Wednesday morning, I go and feed these sheep at a historic farm in Wilmington. And I like to laugh that, Kevin's not the only one that has what do you call it? What? Crozier. Yes, that's the word. Yes, a shepherd's hook. So we got 2 shepherds in the house. We love to travel, and we've had some amazing trips with our family. Both of our girls went on study abroad semesters. Emily went to Ecuador, and Margaret went to Chile, and we were, of course we had to go visit them and have an adventure. Luckily for me, my family I don't know that they don't mind or they're just used to the fact that I'm gonna stop and sketch. And sometimes these particular books, I should have brought one with me, they're really about as big as this. And it does not take a lot of material. I have, if I really want to get small, I have an Altoid box with watercolors in it and a tiny little book. And all I have to do is, half an hour while we're sitting there, we're having drinks, we're having a good dinner. We play cards a lot when we're on vacation. As we're playing cards, as we're sitting on a deck, it's just a wonderful way for me to kind of remember the moment. I'll flip back through these little sketchbooks and I'll have our scorecards from playing hearts and, funny jokes that were told at the time. And it's just a really special way for me to immediately be pulled back into that moment. So that's part of why I sketch. I was going to share a few other people's opinions about why it's good to sketch too. So you think about it, everybody's got a camera with them all the time now. So why not just take pictures? What's the difference? Well, like I said, these sketchbooks take me immediately back into a moment. And as you can see from this tree right here, it's not about being accurate. It's not about making it scientific so that it looks just like whatever it is. It's not even about something really, really important. I mean, that tree is not necessarily important to anybody but me. So why sketch? All right, so I've got a few quotes here from different artists. This one, Wendy McNaughton says, "Drawing slows us down. It keeps our hands moving so we can pay attention to things that we usually overlook or that we ignore." And this was a page from when I took my museum class to the Brandywine Zoo. And it's part of what we've been talking about this weekend. There's a lot of world out there, and how do I pick what to do? Well, we all gathered in front of the lemurs, and the lemurs were moving around. We had to really think about this. We had to really look at these animals and, how do you draw their funny little faces? You have to start breaking down, what shape is this made of? We have to draw what we see, not what we think we see. Right, Camino art people? Draw what you see, not what you think you see. Here's another one, an artist named Danny Gregory that I really like. Art makes every day matter. For me, art isn't just something to sell in a gallery or hang on the wall. It's a way of documenting the stories of my life and the beauty that surrounds me. And this is a man who didn't start sketching until he was an adult and had children, and his wife died tragically, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to come out of that moment. And so he just started sketching his life. There's a wonderful video that I showed everybody called Art Before Breakfast, or maybe it's the Art of Breakfast. Either way, he's just drawing his cup of coffee, and he's sketching his bagel, and it's a beautiful sketch, and it takes him outside of the grief and into the moment of noticing what's in front of him. In sketching, like I said, we have to think about what is our story. We have this huge view around us. This was when I was waiting for Kevin. He was in a meeting, and I was just kind of hanging out. I had my sketchbook because I think we were on our way to the beach or something. And it was really cold outside, so I was looking for a window seat somewhere. And there was just this line of bushes sort of like out behind the air conditioners. I never would have seen it otherwise. But to me, it just felt like the cold. It was a gray, cold day, and here's this repetition of bare branches. And it was a really nice, I don't know if I would use the word spiritual, but it was a centering way to spend that time instead of just scrolling on your phone. It's a much deeper way to connect, even if all you're connecting with is the bushes out behind the air conditioner. Here's a quote by Thomas Merton. Did you know he was a sketcher? He probably wasn't. But he says, "One of the most important and most neglected elements in the beginnings of the interior life is the ability to respond to reality, to see the value and the beauty in ordinary things, to come alive to the splendor that is all around us and in the creatures of God." And I think that really says it. So we were talking about photographs versus sketches. Why bother when you got your phone right there? You can take 100 million pictures and, then have to figure out, how do I get back to that? When do I remember? Do I even remember where it was when I took that picture? So one of my favorite things to do is to sketch while I'm alone and while I'm at a meal. And so I took a trip. I was meeting some people up in Greece, and we were all going to Crete. It was a group of artists. But I thought, I can't go to Greece and not go to Athens. And I'd never done anything like that by myself. It was so empowering. I went to Athens. I had my hotel room that overlooked the Parthenon, and I went out, and I could eat whenever I wanted to. And I could sit down and sketch if I wanted to. And I could go, do whatever I wanted to on this trip. And so I go to this little outdoor cafe, and I'm looking at the menu, and I said, "Can I get this with shrimp instead of octopus?" And he said, "No." He said, you want the octopus. I'm like, do I? And he's like, you want the octopus. I was like, okay, okay. And he brought it out, and I thought, wow, look at this octopus. It really looks octopus. And I tasted it, and it was fabulous. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And so I thought, I've got to use I have the card from the restaurant. I was talking to the waiter. We were talking about the octopus, and I thought, I need to thank this octopus. And I was trying to figure it out with my Google Translate, and I asked the waiter, I'm like, is this how you write it? And he thought I was trying to say, thank you for the octopus. And so I had him just write it down in my journal. And then on the side, I said, thank you, octopus. And it is one of my most favorite memories ever. And half of that is because I was sketching it. So sketching, especially when you're on a trip and you got other people with you, teaches you to look slow and draw fast. Because it's all about drawing what you see, not what you think you see. So you have to really connect those eyeballs to your drawing hand. The sketch on the right is familiar to my Camino friends because maybe you've seen videos of the giant thurible. It's as big as this podium. And it takes 8 men to swing it in the cathedral there at Santiago because it's so big and it's so heavy. But man, that is a sight to see. And we had this wonderful tour guide, and we were just kind of walking around, and I thought, I'm taking notes about the cathedral. Why should I not draw this? That would be even better, just to draw it next to all my notes. And it turns out that they would swing this gigantic thurible filled with incense because the pilgrims really smelled bad. And I can speak from experience that after you've been hiking for 2 weeks uphill, you don't smell good. And so they swing this incense, and it's like something you have never seen before. And I thought, all right, this is really specific to this one place, and I'm never going to see anything like it again. I need to at least do a quick sketch. So sometimes those were sketches that were done really quickly. This one I took longer with. This was a moment where I tagged along with Kevin to go to a board meeting in New York, and we were back in our old seminary neighborhood. Now, when we lived there with our young kids, the meatpacking district on the Lower West Side was just meatpacking places. And there was no High Line, there were no boutique stores, there was no Whitney Museum down there. And so now it's completely different. And the craziest thing is this new park. It's called the Little Island, and they have built it out onto one of those longshoreman piers in the Hudson River. And it's a feat of engineering, for one thing. And with all the mature trees and landscaping, it looks like it's been there forever. It's just bizarre. And it looks like it's made out of these cascading champagne glasses. And so I sat on a bench, and I really thought, okay, how is this thing put together? And I really had to look at it for a long time and figure out where these shapes come together. And then I thought, all right, it's not just about that, it's about my story. My story is that La Bergamo was our favorite little French bakery when we lived there, and we would go, we didn't have a lot of money, so we'd only get it on special occasions, and we'd get the fancy little pastries. And it was being able to see the Whitney Museum, which didn't used to be there, behind the meatpacking sign. And it was just this whole wonderful mixture of my past and my present happening at the same time. And you can see that I also include my journaling in it. It's not just a sketch like you would make for art class. It's also about what I'm going through inside, what's our itinerary, why are we here, all that business. So this is a slow down and really, really look to figure it out. Let's see. So as you can see, it's really great to be able to say, I'm sketching in Florence right now at the Uffizi. And one of the things I encourage my students to do is to do the same thing multiple times because you're building muscle memory. Like, let's take Serena Williams, for example. She's really good at what she does, but she wasn't when she was a beginner. Nobody is great as a beginner. Now, she's amazing, and she doesn't have to say, all right, the ball's coming to my right, and I'm going to swing back. You know, she doesn't have to go through those mental exercises. And the same thing is true when you start sketching repeatedly. You get that muscle memory, and as you're doing the same thing, yesterday we did daffodils 3 or 4 times, and you start to understand, your hand knows as much as your eyes know, that the little ruffly center of it and how the petals are going to turn out, and does the stem bend before it goes down. It becomes that muscle memory that gives you a little bit of a head start the next time you are drawing it. And if you think about, like, Monet was drawing or painting the cathedral and the haystacks and the water lilies over and over and over again. After he'd painted that cathedral 4 or 5 times, he wasn't really worried about the architecture anymore. He was able to think about the light and the color and then exaggerate that. And so hopefully, you know, my students will learn that as they're doing these things over and over again, you can master it and then go a little step further, and master that and go a step further, and master that and go a step further. Here's another just example of from our family trips, how I just love, you know, a quick sketch to remember where we are, and to tell you that it doesn't need to be anything important, all right? It can be a cup of coffee, it can be the flowers in the landscape, and still be really, really special. And part of what I like to do as a journaler, an urban sketcher, is to include brochures and labels and business cards and ticket stubs and anything else that I can. You always have to have your glue stick. You have your paints, you have your glue stick, and you can add anything along the way. So it's kind of a mixture of journaling, sketching, and scrapbooking, I guess. I also like to put in a map. And again, these are not maps that anyone has to drive with. You're not interested in accuracy. You just want to give like a good feeling about where you're going. Most of the time, I'll do this on a page before I even leave for the trip, because I want to get excited and I want to think about where we are going on our itinerary. The middle one is kind of a different idea because that was done during a month-long residency in Ireland. And at the end of the month, I wanted to make a little map of the town and put in all the places that we'd gone to and loved. Shout out to the Camino group again. Yay! This is a page that I did before I even left. This was like when I was doing my training, my walking training. I was also doing my sketching training. And I wanted to put in the map of where we were going and the itinerary, and specifically the mileage, because I was getting really nervous about this. And, you know, that was my very first page. And then for several pages after that, I did some journaling about what I was expecting, what I was afraid of, you know, some poetry of people who'd already been on the Camino. And it makes it nice so that, you know, I can open it up, and on the very first page, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we did. Here's another, like I told you before, the page with the coffee cup, that was a day when I just could not walk anymore. And there were a few of us that said, you know, we got to take a taxi today. And once we got there, you know, lo and behold, we had the whole day ahead of us. And so we wandered around, and at one point I was on my own, and I just sat down to have a cup of coffee, and it was just marvelous. It was so relaxing and wonderful. And so I started journaling, And then I thought, well, I should draw on top of my journaling, right? Because there was this great tablecloth and this blue cup, and it was really a wonderful way to spend time alone. But it's also great to sketch with a buddy. So this is my travel buddy, Kaylee. Shout out. She, all I have to do is say, do you want to go? ... And she'll say yes. And she took one of my sketching classes years and years ago in Charlotte, and now she's a master sketcher herself. And I love that when we are on the same trip and even sitting at the same table, we'll have these beautifully different but similar pages. And so if you look at this and that and that, this was a fabulous memory of Kaylee had figured out, she was reading ahead in the guidebook, that some of the convents, the nuns would provide cookies or some kind of food to the pilgrims on their way, that they'd been doing it for hundreds of years. But you had to know when to go, and you had to know where to look, and you had to ring the bell, and there was this, what this is this little swivel window. It was really weird because we could never see the nun on the other side. And so she swings around. It's like a lazy Susan with a door in it. And we put our euros there, and she swung it back around, and we waited, and then it came back with our euros and cookies shaped like fish. We were so excited. You would have thought we were 3 years old. We were so excited for fish cookies. And so we were like, let's go have some tea and draw our fish cookies. And so the little hiker guy there is from the tea shop where we were. And, it's the same experience, but from her side and from my side, because her story is not the same as my story. And that's why I love doing it as a group. And, like I say, shout out to the groups. My good friend Robbie McQuiston right here, she got to go with me on a sketching trip to Italy back, 2017, I think. And your dad came along, to make sure we were all okay and to make sure that, we all got together at night to eat. And we enjoyed, he was so funny. We were sitting at the big table, all of the group, and in Italy, everything tastes good. Like a slice of tomato tastes like heaven. And I remember I was eating, I go, this is so good. And he just looked at me and he said, you really like food, don't you? It's like, yes, I do. And, but all that to say, we had a wonderful group. We would meet together in the mornings. Then we would take little trips. We had somebody else who did all the logistics, and he would put us on the bus, and we'd go to this hill town, and we'd get back on the bus and go to this fabulous restaurant. And then we'd go on the bus to another wonderful hill town, and it was just a wonderful week. And this particular day when we were sketching on the steps of the piazza in Cortona, these little boys came, and they were so interested. And, you have to be kind of comfortable inviting people into your, your bubble. But it was charming. And it was, you don't have to be good at it. I think that's what I've been trying to say this weekend to my Camino friends who are learning to sketch, is that it's a book. It's your journal. It's not ever going on the wall. It doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be about you. And, it's just a great way to participate together. And I will say that there's an urban sketching group in Memphis that meets the first Saturday of every month. So you have an opportunity to sketch with friends right here. One of the things that I also encourage my students to do is to really look at colors. Like our left brain says an apple's red. You get the red tube of paint and you make it red, or the red magic marker. Right brain says, would you take a look at that apple? It's not all red. It's got some yellow in it. It's got some greenish shadows. There's a bruise on this side that's got a little purple in it. And so one of the things that we do is really look at colors and think about learning your paint and how to mix colors and, why use the green coming out of the tube when there are 3,000 greens in front of you, and all the leaves and the trees and the grass. So one of the things that I really enjoyed was when we were in Patagonia and when I was in Athens, I was looking at ice and I was looking at marble, white things, but they're not white. They're shadows, and there are, the old stone and the newer stone, and, what color are the shadows on that white stone? And so a lot of times we'll just do a little color sketch to figure things out. Up on the top part, that was from my trip to Athens, and you've never seen so many shades of blue there. It's just gorgeous. And so you do a few little color swatches, and that way too you're also not hung up on like, oh, I have to draw the Parthenon. No, you do what's fun for you, because again, this is your book. You don't have to show it to anybody if you don't want to. Let's see where we are. Oh, haha, yes. So sketching on location teaches you to not get hung up on mistakes. We're all gonna make mistakes. It doesn't matter how many years you've been sketching. And so this was also in Ireland, and I was sort of parked myself at the corner of the big town square, and I was excited about doing all the colorful buildings, and then there was this row of cars, and then I thought, how about that big church right there? It's kind of important to the whole scene and to my story. Like, well, I'm just gonna glue one in. So I had my handy dandy glue stick, and I just tore out another piece and I added the steeple in. And now, instead of looking at it as a huge mistake, I look at it as, I'm so clever. I figured out how to make a pop-up book. So, how do I start sketching, you asked? Well, if you were not with me and our Camino friends this weekend, I would say you don't have to have a lot of stuff. You just have to have paints and a book and maybe a pencil and a pen. We talked about drawing first with pencil, which is a gesture drawing where you're trying to find the volumes of something. And then sometimes we start with a pen, where we're doing a contour drawing, where you're really just looking at the outlines of shapes. Either way, you add the watercolors, and you do it whatever way you like it. That's what I told them. I said, you can do it always in pencil. You can do it always in watercolor. Whatever floats your boat. I'm here to show you different options, and then you take it and do whatever you want to with it. This is an example of what I do with my students. The pencil drawing in the middle is a gesture drawing. And then I make everybody like turn their radish around. And we did a contour drawing where you're using a pen and you're looking for the outline of shapes. And then at the bottom, we did one, okay, I said, you kind of know your radish now. Let's do it in watercolor and see what happens. Like, don't put any pencil down, don't put any pen down first, just go for it with watercolor. And then in the end, the one at the top left, you do it whatever combination makes you happy. And all of them, I think, are lovely radishes. And who would have thought that a radish would be a fun thing to sketch? It doesn't have to be big or important or historically, anything. I think there's real beauty in a radish. And that part, to me, that's part of the sketching practice, is like Thomas Merton said, finding the beauty in the ordinary and in the life around you. So, you want to learn how to sketch, where do I start? There's like this whole great big world. I like to start with plants. Plants are very forgiving. And you can go in your own backyard and, do a sketch once a month, and you can see what's blooming, what's changed, where the leaves have fallen off. You can go to the Botanic Garden or down to the riverfront or wherever it is that's your favorite place to be and see what's around you. You can take your humble front door. You know, that's something you see every single day. What makes you happy about it? The one on the right was from when we had bought a house in Charlotte, and it was full of azalea bushes in the front yard, but I didn't know what color they were going to be. And so when I finally figured out that they were going to be red and pink, I had to go paint them. We also do an exercise with a color star, not a color wheel so much because it's an odd number and we don't need indigo. We just use blue and purple. And it's a good way to be able to see complementary colors that are across from each other in the star versus the circle. And we find little things around the house that are those primary and secondary colors. And it's just another way, like doing a color wheel is a little boring. This way you can do a color wheel, color star, that is a little more fun. You can do something with a map. You can map out your own neighborhood. You can map your favorite places in Memphis. You can map wherever you went in Florida on your vacation. And again, it's very loose, it's very general, and it's very personal. I love to sketch in a museum. And the one on the right here was when we were in Greece, and I was just blown away by all of these patterns that looked really kind of modern. And I just wanted to take that home with me in a way that was not just a picture. You know, you've taken 100 pictures already. How are you going to go back and even find what was interesting to you? But if I sketch it, it'll be in my memory, it'll be in my muscle memory, it'll be in my sketchbook, and I can find it really easily. And I just was blown away by the fact that for thousands of years, somebody said, I need a bowl to put my flower in. And the artist said, can we put an octopus on it? And can we put a fish on it? Like, isn't it better with a fish on it? And, you know, this idea that we have a drive somehow to be creative and to find the beauty in what's in front of us. And, you know, maybe you're a fisherman that needs a bowl, and so you ask for a fish on it. Oh, the one on the bottom here, this is from a great show at the Metropolitan. And again, this is a little tiny sketchbook, so I'm in there with my pen, and I was standing up. I was kind of like against the wall, but it was called, the Christian Heavenly Bodies, Fashion and the Christian Imagination. And they had taken all these fashion, like Christian-inspired fashion, like mosaics and like this crazy bishop's hat dress, and they had put the mannequins within all the different exhibits. And it was really fantastic, like, because the clothes were crazy, and to see them like with the ancient exhibits and all this. So I really had fun doing that. But the sketch is this big, you know, it didn't take very long. And then on the other half of the sketchbook, I glued in the map of the Met and my ticket from the day. Sketch something yummy. That's the best one. It gives you a great excuse to go out and get a beautiful pastry, and then you sit down and sketch it. Or these were my scallops that I was doing when I was on my, you know, self-empowered vacation to Athens. And I thought, I've got all day. I'm going to sit here and sketch these scallop shells. So now you're a sketcher. All you got to do is go book the trip, right? Get yourself a sketchbook, get some paints. They don't have to be expensive. And just start. Make yourself a little map before you even get there, and go on a trip and see what your story is. See what interests you. And if you are interested in pursuing this, these are some of my favorite resources, books and websites and other artists who are just, they do wonderful, really different work. And it's like I've been saying, we can all be sketching in the Great Hall and do something completely different because we all have our own story. So, thank you.
So a few questions or comments or responses to Caroline's gift of enthusiasm and encouragement from folks? Some testimonials from folks? Yeah.
I'll give a testimonial and a thank you to Caroline again. So I am not the least bit artistic. Like, I can barely draw a stick person, and I only joined this weekend to be with these folks that I walked with again. But I practicing looking, no matter what the thing looked like. For the first time ever, I didn't really care what it looked like, and I was also proud of what it looked like, because I looked and looked and looked at the thing, and that was I cannot believe it was fun. Just sit down.
Thank you, Ardell.
Nice. Yep. The art of attention and paying attention. Yeah.
I just found that it took courage, because I knew I was surrounded by people that could, but they were just not judgmental, because it was my very own piece. And that was very empowering.
And did having it in a book help with that?
It did. And knowing that the only people that see that are going to be the people that I choose to let them see it.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And, you know, we have this weird idea somehow that artists are just born with a gift. And I think that if you're not Leonardo or Mozart, you know, you have to work at it. Nobody is good when they start. And we've all seen what good looks like. So it's very hard, and we criticize ourselves so much. But you just keep practicing, you know? Be like Serena. You got to keep taking lessons.
Other folks? Other thoughts? Yeah, Pat.
I was absolutely fascinated.
Oh, thank you.
And that's really big, because my artistic talent ends when I can draw a bird from a capital S.
We all have our creative gifts. I am convinced. I can't cook worth a damn. And there are people that is their gift, and they can just like look in the pantry and say, ooh, this will work. You know, art has been my thing for a long time, and I've done a lot of practice. And I enjoy it. It's like you said, if it's not fun, who wants to do that? You know, you got to do what makes you happy, and find, like, you know, if the little bird makes you happy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I really appreciate too that the serving as an antidote to what I might do otherwise. Like, I might scroll, or I might just blitz by, or I might not really be present. I mean, and I said might in all of the circumstances. It's not a might. I will scroll. I will not pay attention. You know, and so the practice of it, that is, to me, sounds like very much a spiritual discipline of just being in the present moment, which is, you know, every mindfulness teacher ever in every tradition said, stop and look and listen, and, you know, where you are now.
Yeah, you got to notice.
Yeah.
I was going to say something like you said it, but probably not as eloquent. Just the fact that it has you stop and be mindful. And like you'd said yesterday, I'd never sketched before either, and saw these girls doing it in Spain, and went and bought myself colored pencils and a little book, and I started from there. But the times I remember most, or that sit in my brain the clearest, are the ones where I was sitting and sketching. And so both increasing the mindfulness and appreciation of the space where you are right now, which is hard to do a lot of times in this world. But then also, this is one that is a huge struggle for me, is being kind to yourself, and you know, not being a perfectionist when it comes to something like this, and trying to let that go. Anyway, so
And what do we do when we make a mistake? We glue something right on top of it. Draw a chicken and glue that on top.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I love that corollary spiritual discipline of self-kindness, and that's really lovely.
Yeah, yeah. I had to tell a few people yesterday, speak to yourself like you would speak to your friend. You're not going to tell them they made a terrible picture.
She might. I've known her for 50 years, and she might. She might. I wondered if, so if you wanted to keep doing this, and you say just look and keep doing, what kind of, do they have like sketch classes, or do you start with drawing, or watercolor, or all
These books, these websites, if you're into online classes, Sketchbook School is really great. They've got all different artists that will teach you lessons. You know, I bet you could find somebody in Memphis that would, you know, we don't have the College of Art anymore, but somewhere.
There's an urban sketch group.
There you, how are you?
But I live in Atlanta, but it's more just how you walked us through it yesterday.
Yeah.
So helpful than just say, I go on a trip and I start
Yeah.
doing that. I need you right there.
Well, you just,
Know a little bit more.
She also does trips.
yeah. Who wants to go to France? Let's go to France. Yeah, so you look for resources, you look for classes, and you just make yourself practice. And if you have a friend doing it with you, it's a lot easier to practice.
Caroline, we're super grateful for your own creativity, but also your encouragement, which is so much a part of the rest of us getting out there with our pens and pencils. And just to say that you might not think a sermon on the commandments would also be about creativity, but it is. So stick around for church at 10:30 and wait for it because it's coming. And we'll see you all in church. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, dear. Yeah.